Hey guys, it's me, Karen from MindDirectors. How are you? It's been such a long time since I've actually recorded anything or done anything, so I decided to use SoundCloud as a new medium to get my message out there and get the stories out. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm getting over a cold or even a flu. For the past 2 weeks, I've been feeling completely crap. And I lost my voice as well. And actually, during this time, I actually had to drive out to Dunkeld to do some work there with the community. Dunkeld is a place that I've never ever been before. I have never heard of Dunkeld. I have never been there. I've never been to the Grampians. So for those of you who out there who've been to the Grampians, then you know what I'm talking about. For those of you who haven't heard of the Grampians, it's basically a mountainous, hilly place in Melbourne or Victoria that is breathtaking. It's like our Grand Canyon of Victoria. And there is actually a place in the Grampians called the Grand Canyon, I think it is. So that was about all that I knew about Dunkeld. But I was excited. I knew that I was going since March, and I was really excited because I want to go on a little trip. And it's not every day you decide, oh yeah, I'm going to go and take a drive out to Grampians. It is a good 3-hour drive from where I live. It's not far, I suppose, but it was something that I wouldn't just normally just wake up and decide to do. So I booked myself into the Royal Mail Hotel, and not knowing what it was, I basically picked it because it was the closest one to the venue, and I thought in my head that I could just walk it. So in my head, I thought, I'll take the train to Dunkeld, and then I will just walk it to the venue because it's not too far, and then hopefully I could get the venue person or basically the person from the council, just ask if they were okay to just drive me back to the hotel, since it was only it looked like it would only be like a 10-second drive or a 30-second drive or something. It was really close. Or I could walk it if it didn't look too far, or if it wasn't too scary or remote or anything. Little to my knowledge, after I booked for my hotel and I asked, so how far away is the train station from this hotel? They told me that, no, sorry, there's no train that goes here. It's only a bus. And that just changed things. That changed everything. So I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to take a train to Ballarat and then take the bus, because this is going to be a 4-hour drive or a 4-hour trip. So I thought, well, look, if this is going to be the case and I have to follow time restrictions and whatnot, I might as well just drive myself to Dunkeld and just do a little road trip on my own. So having a look at Google Maps, as we all do, it looked like that driving through Ballarat was going to be the easiest option and the fastest option. And I thought to myself, you know what, from where I live to Ballarat, it's a good fair distance. So maybe I'd stop over at Ballarat and just take a break before I would move on. So that was the plan. When it came to the actual day of leaving, so the event itself, the meeting itself was on Wednesday, and I was thinking I'll drive up Wednesday morning, stop at Ballarat at around lunchtime, have some lunch, keep driving an hour and a half away, and I will get to Dunkeld about 2:00. And that will give me about 2 hours to rest, to go to sleep, to get ready. And then at 4:00, I could go and get some food to eat at the bar, because apparently everyone told me that the Royal Mail Hotel was one of the best places to go to eat. The food is fantastic. So I thought, fantastic, I could make use of that time and eat at 4:00, and then head over to the venue at 5 to get ready to rock and roll. On the day, 1 week prior to that day, I completely lost my voice and I had the flu. And at that time, I was like, oh my God, I need to take drugs. I need to get medicine. I can't do this alone. Even though you're meant to let your body, do its work. But I was just, no, I can't do this. I have to get medication. So I got myself to a doctor ASAP. I told the doctor, I need my voice. I'm going away next week for work. I need my voice. So I got some antibiotics and I was trying to get better. I was trying to do everything I could. But funny thing was the whole entire week was so busy. It was just so much stuff that was going on. On the day, I was getting better, but I was still a little bit muggy. You know that feeling where you're still a little bit clumped up and you're still coughing, you're still blowing your nose. You know, it's not the greatest feeling. And I actually ended up sleeping in a little bit as well because I was feeling really tired from the week that was. Imagine going to work about like 6 days. I had weekends where I had to go to work as well. I had a big weekend because one of my good friend's birthday, and I had 2 assignments that I had to finish. It was hectic. Let's just say that. It was hectic. So in the end, I set out to go to Dunkeld. And the first bit of the drive was okay. I mean, driving into the city, driving past the city, driving past the west side, you know, everything was fine. You know, I've done it before. That was okay. The route to Ballarat was okay as well. That day, it wasn't the greatest. I wouldn't say it was the greatest weather. It was a bit rainy, a bit cold, a bit grey, but it was okay. It was not too bad. It was 110 all the way, so it was good. I got to Ballarat, and then the weather started to change, and it was getting a bit, you know, rainy and cold. And when I got there, I felt okay. It wasn't a really long drive after all, and I didn't feel too bad. So I thought, you know what? I don't need to stop. I'm not hungry. Let's just keep going. So I kept going. That was the worst mistake I've ever made. I kept going. The trip to Dunkeld from Ballarat down Glenelg Highway was one of the scariest drives I've ever done. Ever. Scary. And I'm not talking scary like driving alongside the cliff scary, like, you know, when you drive on the scenic route, let's say from Melbourne to Sydney, you will drive on the edge and there's like a lot of trees and stuff. You know, it wasn't like that. It wasn't scary like that. It was scary because it felt remote. It felt like I was literally driving in the middle of nowhere. There was no towns. Well, sorry, there are towns, highway towns along the way, but it wasn't like driving down Gippsland. Like Gippsland is the other direction, so it's the country, but the other direction, and it feels like all the space has been it's a habitat for people. It's, what's that word, inhabitable? No, that means it's not. I don't know. You get what I mean, right? It's got people there. It's got people living on farms. It's got people. There's people driving up and down. There's people doing business. There's all sorts of different stuff happening in Gippsland. I'm going to the west, so this is a different way. And honestly, it felt like nobody lived there. No one lived there, and it was just trees. And it was just dirt, and it was the scary kind of dirt. It was the orange desert dirt, you know, not the, if anyone's ever done the Melbourne to Sydney trip, it's a scenic route. It's beautiful. It's just hills and trees and mountains and, oh, it's beautiful. This is scary as shit. And it's not even like driving across the Nullarbor, which I haven't done before. But this was just scary. And imagine doing this alone. I had driven on the way to Dunkeld. I had driven about 5 minutes to 10 minutes on this stretch of road at 100, mind you, and it was just deforestation, like just acres and acres and acres of just trees that have been cut down, where there is just wood chip all over the ground from all the trees that have been cut and shredded. And you could see in the distance that there are a few pine trees still there, little skinny ones that are still growing. And then you can see on the other end, there are still some taller pine trees that haven't been cut yet. That freaked the crap out of me. I actually felt that feeling inside, that anxious feeling. I actually felt like, holy shit, I don't want to use paper ever again. So I kept driving, and this trip just made me so freaked out. There was literally no one. No one. There was no one living there. There was no one in front of me. There was no one behind me. It just felt like I was driving on my own down this stretch of road. And the whole entire trip, I was freaking out. But I was just saying to myself, it's an hour and a half. And every single time I pass one of those signs where it tells you, Dunkeld, 130, and then Dunkeld 80, Dunkeld 76, I just kept counting the time. Just counting the time and thinking maybe if I drove a little bit faster, I could get there. It was so scary, and the weather was so bad. The weather was like rainy, and then it will stop raining, and then it will start raining again, and then it'll stop raining. And there was nothing to see as well. It wasn't like it was beautiful, because I've done a lot of trips before. I'm one of those people who like to go on drives, and I love looking at stuff. There was nothing to look at here. There wasn't even a farm to look at. I mean, it was like I'd have to drive like 10, 20, 30 minutes before I see a farm, and then drive another 10, 20, 30 minutes down and see nothing, and then see another farm. It was just so scary. And there were so many parts of the road that didn't really have anything but 2 lanes, and then a sign that said a ragged edge or something, be careful. And it was like, oh my God, what am I doing? I was seriously regretting not listening to an older friend of mine who said to me, you're better off taking this other route and go downwards, so down towards Geelong, and then go down that way instead of going through Ballarat, because it seems faster that way. Oh man, I regret not listening to him. But anyway, finally I made it to Dunkeld, checked in, went into my room. Gorgeous room. If you want to check it out, I'll leave some links below for you to check out on my blog where where the room was. It was beautiful. It was a shitty day. There was fog everywhere, so I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see the mountains or anything. One thing really lucky though, I got an upgrade, so that was fantastic. My room was upgraded, and I got the mountain view room instead of the garden view room, which was fantastic. But I didn't see anything anyway. So, had my rest. I got there a little bit later because I woke up later. But anyway, did my thing. The next day came around, and I did enjoy a lot of different things, which I will put down in my a link to my blog that describes that. But after I did all the stuff in the morning, I thought to myself, I'm not feeling the greatest. Should I go back through that scary road again in Glenelg, or should I take a different route? See, the original plan was that the second day I would take the road up to Hall's Gap, which is the middle of the Grampians, and then from there I might do a short trail, so maybe walk out to a lookout and maybe take a picture. That's the plan. That was what I was thinking. Look, mind you, I've never been to Grampians before. So I didn't know what I was expecting. I just thought this would be a good idea and a good opportunity, since I was literally at the base of the Grampians. I might as well make it up to the top, right? And the other reason why I wanted to do this trip was because I knew at the end of Hall's Gap, so when I got to Hall's Gap, I could take another patch of road that will take me into another big city called Stawell. And once I got into Stawell, I would be able to drive through to Ararat and take this larger freeway or highway freeway called the A8, which will take me back to Ballarat, because I was going to see my friend there anyway. And this would be a much more comfier drive home than driving back down that Glenelg Highway again. So that was my option. Either go down Glenelg Highway or drive up to Hall's Gap and then take the A8 and enjoy a little bit of like a scenic drive. Or I could follow what my friend had told me and just drive down the same road that he told me to go down in Geelong and just go home, straight home. But the plan was to see my friend in Ballarat. So I thought to myself, you know what? Let's do it. Let's go to Hall's Gap. The weather wasn't too bad. Let's go. This is the second mistake I made. That was the worst decision ever. I'd say maybe the first 10 to 15 minutes of the drive to Hall's Gap was okay. You know, it was like the normal drive that you would get from anywhere else. That I have driven from, like I said, I've driven to Gippsland. I've driven down towards the peninsula as well. I just did the Glenelg Highway trip. What could be worse than this? This Hall's Gap trip was the worst ever. It freaked me out completely, because this road is a road that was untraveled. There's literally untraveled. Thank God there was a piece of road there, because if not, it would just be gravel, I reckon. But it just felt so remote, so outside of everything, that it just freaked me out completely. We're talking 1 lane up, 1 lane down, and the road was big enough for your car, and that was about it. There was nothing to look at. It was trees. And the worst thing was, there was just a bushfire around this area at the start of the year that I didn't even know. And I was driving through patches of the forest growing back. That freaked me out, because there are trees that are still blackened because they're still burnt from the fire. There was actually a patch that freaked me out big time. The trees were so eerie. They were grey because they were burnt. There was a bit of leaves and stuff growing back, but it wasn't healthy. It's one of those, those wintry trees where they're all skinny and curly, and they just look like a haunted forest. And I could just feel it the entire drive. I could just feel that sort of anxiety, that burning sensation. I could feel the horror. It was horrific. It was scary. And it was just, I don't know what I was feeling. I don't know whether I was feeling the animals and their sort of their anxieties when they passed on, or whether it was people that got caught up there. It was just so scary. It was so remote. I had thoughts of, my God, if my car broke down here, shit, no one's going to find me. And I had no internet as well. I had no coverage. I was thinking, oh man, if people killed people, you could literally just drive up this road and just chuck them over the side. No one would find them. It's so remote. So I just, in my head, I was just thinking, just keep going. You can't back out now. There's no way you can back out. So you have to keep going. It was so scary. I am still feeling feelings of trauma just talking about this now. I just kept going, and I was driving at 100, 110, 120 whenever it was safe, because I knew the trip was going to be an hour, and I was like, I'm trying my best to make this trip less than an hour. There was it was so remote that there was no signs. There was no signs telling you that there was a curve. There was no signs telling you there's a bend ahead, so slow down to 30. There was no signs to say anything. Nothing. Only those white picket sticks with the red tabs on it, so you know that this is the road. Don't drive off into the tree. And there was a tiny little green sign every now and then that says HG27. HG36, which was telling you Halls Gap. Look, believe me, I'm freaked out about it. But thank God, thank heavens, I finally made it to Halls Gap. And just before Halls Gap, there's a lake called I think Belfield. And part of the plan was I was going to get off at Lake Belfield and take a couple of pictures. But that day, I was just so freaked out. When I saw Lake Belfield in that sort of grey atmosphere, it just turned me off completely. All I saw was just rocks, and it just felt so scary. So I was like, nah, screw this, keep going. Drove into the middle of Halls Gap, and I was like, oh my God, what the hell? Halls Gap is literally in the middle of the Grampians. When they say Halls Gap is the heart of the Grampians, they are not wrong when they say it is the heart. It is inside the valley of the mountains. So it is dark when you get in there. It's dark, and there's a small little town, and you have to do the trails. So either I veer off the main road and drive up, or I have to walk up. And I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I was just so freaked out. I couldn't do it. And I decided I wasn't going to stop. If I was with someone else, if I was with a friend, if I was with a bunch of friends, totally, hell yeah, of course I would go. But by myself, I just couldn't do it. I really couldn't do it. So I just kept driving on. I thought, you know what? I'm done. I need to get back onto the freeway, and I'll just go straight back to Ballarat. If I get to Ballarat early, it doesn't matter. I'll hang out at a shopping centre. I'll go to the movies. I'll do something. There's got to be something I can do. So I kept driving and I made the third mistake of the trip. I got to a fork in the road and it was Stall 22 or Ararat 44. So I thought, well, in the end, I'm going to have to drive past Ararat anyway. So why not just skip all of this and just go straight to Ararat? It's only 44 minutes. Worst mistake, because it would have only taken me about 20 minutes to get to Stall and I would have been back on the freeway again, right? But no, I decided to take the stupid option. I went to Ararat through the scenic route. This route, although prettier, it was still a long drive, a long-ass drive back to Ararat. And it was like, oh my God, what am I thinking? What is going on? This time round, I also drove past another site that was burnt. This site, however, was not like Halls Gap, that site. Well, not Halls Gap, but, where I was around the Dunkeld area. This site was actually red. So it was so burnt, or maybe not as burnt because it was still red. Whereas the stuff on where I was before, it was black. It was grey. It was burnt. It was dead. Whereas here, it just looked like it was really badly sunburnt. It was all red. And I just drove past it and tried not to look. I just kept driving. And the rest of the trip to Ararat was okay. It just took a long time to get there. But it was okay. It was getting prettier. So I start to feel a little bit more at ease. There was a country. You could see the hills. You could see trees. You could see cows. You could see farms, people, that sort of thing. So it felt better. And I was driving actually behind someone else as well. So I was like, okay, cool. I've got someone in front of me. Finally, because the trip to Halls Gap, there was no one. Just like the trip to Glenelg, to Dunkeld, no one. 0 people, right? So at least Ararat, okay, there was someone in front of me. So it wasn't too bad. And then I finally made it to Ararat, and you you won't, maybe you may get it, but I had this overwhelming gush of happiness, like just gushing through. I felt so much better. I felt like, oh my God, I'm back to civilization. I'm back to, where I need to be with people. I saw people everywhere. I was so happy. There was people, there was lots of cars, there was like a bus, there was like a train line. I was like, oh my God, this feels so much better. And I finally made it onto the A8 and oh my God, I felt so much better. I just felt like this is where I need to be and this is exactly the road that I thought the drive to the Glenelg Highway would be, what I thought the drive to Dunkeld would be. And I was so happy to just get back onto a freeway, like a highway, so I could just drive and not see anything and just see, mountains or, farms and stuff, but just be around people. There was like a lot of cars around me. It just felt so good. And I felt so, so good. So while I was driving back to Ballarat, I started to think and I started to recap over what had happened in the last 2 days. And I realized that this whole trip was a very interesting trip, but it was also a really good metaphor for the life and the relationship that I had. I don't know if some of you know, but I recently got out of a relationship that I thought was going to last, that I thought was going to be the relationship that I was going to get married with this person, settle down and be with this person. And over the last month, I decided to end this relationship because it wasn't working and it wasn't what I wanted and it wasn't getting me anywhere. To me, the relationship felt like the Glenelg Highway Drive. It really felt like a trip that I thought was going to be pretty, to get to a place where I knew was going to be good, Dunkeld, picturesque, beautiful, and be in a hotel that everyone says is great, marriage, children. And it was the scariest thing that I've ever done. And when I got there, I thought, do I want to go back down this pathway again? And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So I left and I went up to Hall's Gap, which I thought, this is the next section of my life. This is the new adventure. And that section was scary. But that's the thing with life. It's not always going to look the way you think it is. That sometimes it's going to look scary. It's going to look like things that you've never even thought in your mind that you would ever see in your life. Being in an area that has been affected by nature is not something that you would think you would drive through, but I didn't know. And sometimes in life, you can make decisions where you think you made the right decision, but from your own naivety, you end up in a bad place. But you have to keep going. You can't turn back, because when you turn back, you got no option but to go back down the road that you don't want to go on. So I kept going and I kept going. All of this because I know and I knew I would get to the road that I want to get on, and I would drive on a road that I knew I wanted to get on. Smooth sailing, everything looks great, everything was easy. And I kept going. And that is exactly what life is about, and what making goals is about, and what taking risks is all about. That sometimes you got to take a risk, sometimes you just got to keep going because you believe that you're going to get to where you need to get to. The traveling to get there may not be the greatest thing. Even though some people say you got to enjoy the ride, you may not necessarily enjoy the ride. You may not necessarily enjoy the drive there at all. But at least when you get to the pathway that you wanted to get to, then you'll enjoy it. And sometimes it takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of risk, and it takes a lot of balls to just do it. So I can now understand why not a lot of people would want to take the same pathway as I did, or they want to drive on the same road as I had taken. I understand now why people, when they go into regional areas to do work, they just drive back straight away the next day, because it's too freaky not to. It's too scary not to. It's too anxiety provoking to actually stop thinking about work, stop thinking about where you need to get to, and just look at the scenery around you. That sometimes it can freak the hell out of you. And this is also why a lot of people don't travel for work, don't want to travel for work, and don't want to take the risk. When you think about it, starting a business is exactly like this trip as well. That you're going to travel on the roads that are less traveled, that there is going to be no one around you. There's going to be no one there. There could be people to help you out here and there, but for majority of the time, you've just got to be on your own, and you've got to rely on yourself. But when you get to where you need to get to, that's all that matters in the end. So now that I'm still driving on my A8, I'm still driving down the freeways, I'm still driving on the better roads, I'm interested to see where it's all heading and what's it all going to come out of it, and what am I going to do. And hopefully in the future, when I start working with more people with their pathways, that we'll be able to find a good comfy road as well, instead of the crappy roads that we've already driven on, and we already know what it's going to be like, and we don't want to go there. Because at the end of the day, once you pick the right road, you don't need to look back and think, oh my God, anymore. You don't have to fear, because no matter what lies ahead of you, however scary, suddenly the road changes or whatever, there is always an out. There is always the end result, which is going to be exactly what you thought. So I'll leave you with this story. Thank you for listening. I will have some links below to the rest of the story of Dunkeld. It wasn't all that bad. And hopefully I'll speak to you guys very, very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.